The map that divided the world, drawn by two men in 40 minutes. Imagine you are handed a pencil, a single pencil, and someone tells you, draw a line right here across this map. You have 40 minutes, and when you are done, that line will separate nations. It will split families. It will trigger one of the largest forced migrations in all of human history. And it will still be causing conflict right now, 75 years later. You are not a geographer. You have never set foot in the country you are dividing. You are not a historian, not a diplomat, not a general. You are just a man with a pencil and 40 minutes. This is the true story of the Radcliffe Line, and it begins not with war, not with a treaty, but with a deadline. To understand what happened, we need to go back to the summer of 1947. The British Empire was collapsing. After nearly 200 years of colonial rule over the Indian subcontinent, Britain was exhausted, economically broken by World War II, facing mounting pressure from independence movements it could no longer suppress, and politically unwilling to sustain an empire that was bleeding it dry. The decision had been made. India would be free. But India would not stay whole. For decades, tensions had been building between the Hindu majority and the Muslim minority across the subcontinent. The political leaders of each community, Jawaharlal Nehru for the Indian National Congress and Muhammad Ali Jinnah for the Muslim League, had fundamentally different visions for what independence should look like. Nehru wanted a united, secular India. Jinnah wanted a separate homeland for Muslims. He called it Pakistan, a word that, in Urdu, means land of the pure. Britain's last viceroy, Lord Louis Mountbatten, had been sent to manage the transition. He had originally been given years to do it, then months. Then, under pressure, the deadline was moved to August 14th and 15th, 1947. That is weeks away, and nobody has drawn the border yet. Enter Sir Cyril Radcliffe. Radcliffe was a British lawyer, brilliant by all accounts. He had never been to India. He had no background in cartography, no expertise in the ethnic or religious demographics of the subcontinent, and no particular interest in South Asian politics. He had spent his career in London arguing cases in courts. He was, in every meaningful sense, the wrong man for this job. He was also the only man anyone could agree on, precisely because he had no existing loyalties to any side. Radcliffe arrived in India on July 8, 1947. He was given maps, census data, and reports on religious demographics across the Punjab region in the west and Bengal in the east. He was also given a boundary commission, representatives from both sides meant to advise him. They advised him of nothing. Every session dissolved into deadlock. Every proposal was vetoed by one side or the other. The commission was, functionally, useless. So Radcliffe did what lawyers do when no one can agree. He made the decision himself. He worked in near-total isolation in a house in New Delhi in the brutal heat of an Indian summer. He had no air conditioning. He had maps spread across a table. He had a pencil. And he had a clock ticking down to an independence ceremony that could not be postponed. Now, about those 40 minutes. The 40-minute figure refers specifically to a critical decision point during the drawing of the Punjab boundary. Historical accounts, including testimony from those who worked with Radcliffe, describe a moment where a final, consequential section of the borderline was determined in an extraordinarily short amount of time. Some historians place the figure higher, others dispute the exact number. But the spirit of the claim is not disputed. This border, which would govern the fates of tens of millions of people, was drawn under conditions that can only be described as frantic. Radcliffe himself later admitted that he knew the line was imperfect. He knew villages would be cut off from their fields. He knew wells would fall on one side while the people who depended on them fell on the other. He knew canals would be severed from the irrigation systems they fed. He drew it anyway, because the alternative, no line, was considered worse. When he was done, he burned his papers and left India. He never returned. He reportedly told a friend that he had done what he was asked to do and wanted no part of what followed. What followed was catastrophic. The border was announced on August 17, 1947, 2 days after independence had already been declared. Think about that. People celebrated their freedom on August 14th and 15th without knowing exactly where their country ended. When the line was finally published, the results were immediate and devastating. Approximately 14 to 18 million people were suddenly on the wrong side of the border. Muslims in what was now India began moving toward Pakistan. Hindus and Sikhs in what was now Pakistan began moving toward India.
This was not an orderly migration. It was a panic. Trains, packed beyond capacity, crossed the border in both directions. Villages were attacked. The scale of violence was almost impossible to comprehend. Estimates suggest that between 200,000 and 2 million people were killed in the chaos that followed partition. The exact number has never been definitively established. Families were separated in ways that lasted generations. A grandfather in Lahore, a grandmother in Amritsar, a border between them that could not be crossed. The partition of India in 1947 remains one of the largest forced migrations in recorded human history. And the line that caused it was drawn by a man who had never been to India, using maps that were outdated in a matter of weeks. You might think, that was 1947. That is history. We have moved on. We have not. The region of Kashmir, which sits at the northern end of the Radcliffe Line, was never cleanly assigned in the partition. Its Hindu ruler chose India. Its Muslim-majority population suggested Pakistan. The result was a war that began in 1947 and, in different forms, has never fully stopped. India and Pakistan have fought 4 major wars. Both nations are now nuclear powers. The line of control in Kashmir, a ceasefire line from 1972, is one of the most militarized borders on Earth. Soldiers on both sides have faced each other across a mountain range for over 70 years. In 2019, India revoked the special autonomous status of Jammu and Kashmir, a decision that triggered international attention and intensified the already deep tensions between the two countries. In 2025, skirmishes along the border again made international headlines, a reminder that the consequences of 40 minutes in 1947 are not confined to history books. A pencil line on a map. And the world is still navigating its consequences. We have been talking about the Punjab boundary, the Western Line. But Radcliffe drew 2 lines. The second was in Bengal, in the east of the subcontinent.
This line divided what is today the Indian state of West Bengal from Bangladesh, which was, in 1947, called East Pakistan. The Bengal Partition created its own catastrophe. Millions more displaced. The city of Dhaka, historically a center of Muslim cultural life, became the capital of East Pakistan. Calcutta, now Kolkata, remained with India but was flooded with refugees. In 1971, East Pakistan fought a war of independence from West Pakistan, a war in which an estimated 300,000 to 3 million people died, depending on which government's figures you consult. Bangladesh emerged as an independent nation. The roots of that conflict trace, at least in part, to the division of Bengal, to the second line Radcliffe drew. 2 lines, drawn in weeks. And the consequences are still unfolding, still debated, still killing people across generations. There is a poem about Cyril Radcliffe. It was written by W.H. Auden, one of the great English poets of the 20th century. It is called Partition. In it, Auden imagines Radcliffe sitting with his maps, making decisions about places he has never seen, drawing lines through names he cannot pronounce. The poem is not kind to Radcliffe, but it is not entirely unfair to him either, because here is the uncomfortable truth. Radcliffe did not create the tensions that made partition necessary. He did not invent Hindu-Muslim conflict. He did not design the British Empire or decide that it would end. He was handed an impossible task on an impossible timeline with inadequate tools and no good options. He has been called a villain. He has been called a scapegoat. The reality is probably more complicated. He was a man caught inside a machine much larger than himself, trying to impose a clean geometric solution on a problem that was fundamentally human and therefore irreducibly messy. The tragedy is not that Radcliffe was malicious. The tragedy is that he was ordinary. And ordinary men, given extraordinary power over other people's lives without adequate time or knowledge, tend to get things wrong. Sometimes catastrophically wrong. The story of the Radcliffe Line is not just about India and Pakistan. It is about a pattern that repeats throughout history. Think of the Sykes-Picot Agreement in 1916, where Britain and France divided the Middle East between themselves, drawing lines through the Arab world that ignored tribal and ethnic realities. Those lines gave us the borders of Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. And those borders have been sites of conflict ever since. Think of the Berlin Conference of 1884, where European powers sat around a table and divided Africa into colonies, without a single African representative in the room. The borders they drew bisected hundreds of ethnic groups, separated communities, and created nations with no historical coherence. Many of the conflicts in Africa today trace their shape to those lines. There is a lesson here that is both simple and profound. Borders are not neutral. They are not just lines on maps. They are decisions about who belongs where, who has access to what, and whose identity gets recognized and whose gets erased. When those decisions are made quickly by outsiders without genuine understanding of the people affected, the consequences can echo for centuries. Cyril Radcliffe returned to England. He was made a Baron, Lord Radcliffe. He went on to have a distinguished legal career. He chaired royal commissions. He was respected. He was honored. He reportedly never spoke publicly about the partition in any depth. He died in 1977. The line he drew is still there. It runs for roughly 3,000 kilometers, through fields, through rivers, through the middle of villages. In some places, it runs through the floors of houses so that the kitchen is in one country and the bedroom is in another. 2 men, 40 minutes, and a line that shaped the lives of over 1 billion people. The next time someone tells you that a decision is just a formality, that a document is just paperwork, that a line is just a line, remember this story, because sometimes a line is everything.